Jason, over to you.
So I suppose I can be a little bit optimistic because I got to handle all of the kind of meta, fuzzy, fun stuff. So we dove a bit into the weeds there with the identity and kind of the complexity of the landscape in managing all of those assets. But again, if we kind of go back to our core motivations behind why we're doing this so that we can treat people, we can have conversations with them and engage with them. People are not personas. People are not static profiles. We are very complex. We're complex in isolation. So once you start introducing complexity from environmental, situational context, we heard a lot yesterday about how location can play such a massive role in how people respond. It's the same person, different time of day, different emotional, situational context. So with that in mind, what we're really talking about here is, how can we introduce a bit more of dynamic decisioning in the types of attributes and variables that we consider when we are trying to decide what message should be delivered to that individual. As we move into a world where AI leads us to personalization at scale, we have to answer a couple of really complex questions that I don't think we've addressed as a market. The first is, how are we going to manage with audience ambiguity? Right now, we're very comfortable with our very descriptive models that are explainable. As we move into kind of more of a decisioning where the reasons and the rules and the data attributes that went into it become a bit more obfuscated, marketers must embrace that. But then data partners also need to understand what that means to their business models. So what does licensing data look like when there are several thousand attributes that are going into any decision at any point in time, and there is not a lot of clarity around the relative contribution of that to the decision? So a couple of really big questions that we're going to have to answer. Experian being one of those partners, we're trying to explore how we live in a world where AI and dynamic decisioning can be scalable and applicable for marketers. So we're talking about two big problems. We're talking about a lot of data that goes into solving those. But we're talking about them very much in isolation today, and we're solving them in isolation today, and there's a lot of companies that are doing amazing jobs. You have a lot of people introducing ID graphs, ID resolution services that are handling some of that fragmentation problem. Also, we've got CDPs that are handling some of the fragmentation problem on the marketer side in terms of their desire or their choice to be able to select the platforms they want to work with. And then we have SSPs and ad exchanges and DSPs that are trying to handle some of that transactional fragmentation that occurs across different channels and media types. The big question is in a world where AI is leveraging thousands of data points, where we have billions of edges between different potential matches and identities, and all of that really needs to be made in a decision in the moment. Are we in a infrastructure that's scalable? Are we going to be able to put all of this together and orchestrate it and deliver it in real time? The industry is trying to figure out how that would live. Is it through consolidation? You have a lot of organizations that have decided that the full stack solution is the path to go. You have orchestration, so that again, this kind of fits under CDPs, but is there one central command center where all of the data lives, all of the decisioning lives, and every other platform in this ecosystem ends up being a point solution execution? Or is it operational, right? Do we need to rethink how we trade programmatically, how we process data, where data lives, where decisioning lives? And so under this last point, Experian has been working on trying to figure out whether or not we can actually host data and decisioning in a different place. And we've been doing it through a program, effectively bid enrichment, which is kind of a supply path optimization type tool. But really what it is it's we've taken our identity assets, we've taken all of the big attribute data that can be made available on a user, and we've kind of put it into a data layer that acts as a audience PMP. So this is what the landscape looks like today. I don't need to explain it to everyone. Everyone's probably very familiar with how we do programmatic. It's very much a hub and spoke model. Data and decisioning live in one place, and then it's replicated out, maintained on multiple DSPs, and then syndicated and synced. So that's a lot of data moving, and it's a lot of data being stored across multiple disparate platforms. Bit enrichment effectively takes the audience management component and the data identity management component and moves it upstream in lieu of becoming targetable cookie criteria or targetable mobile ad IDs. You end up with auction filters that effectively filter the auction based on the identity data and the attribute data selected by the marketer. So marketers still are able to use their DSPs as they otherwise would, and SSPs and publishers still transact through the ecosystem as they would. And we're doing this in partnership with BidSwitch to help with some of the aggregation of that supply and demand. This is not a silver bullet. This is just one way we've been trying to think of how we can reapproach where we store data, how data is made available for decisioning. I'm sure that there are other people working on other solutions that would be complementary but yeah, so thus far, I think we've got some stats, time's up, but a couple of the programs that the UK has been running, so they've been up for about a year. We've seen up to a 75% reduction in CPAs across DSPs in order to do that. The US just rolled this one out last week.
Thank you.